Chapter 1. Lila. There were worse things than being stranded in the middle of nowhere during a storm. For example, I could be running from a bear with rabies, fangs foaming, claws ready to shred me into next Tuesday. Or I could be duct-taped to a chair in some basement while someone played Aqua's Barbie Girl on repeat until I begged for death. So yes, there were worse scenarios. That didn't mean this one didn't suck. The rain came down in sideways sheets, as though the sky had tilted and forgotten gravity. Every gust rattled the warped tin roof of the bus shelter I'd claimed as my refuge. I pulled my knees up onto the cracked wooden bench and hugged my bag close, like that would keep me any drier. My phone screen glowed stubbornly through droplets. Searching for drivers. My rideshare app had been saying the same thing for 35 minutes. Any minute now? I muttered and tried for optimism. An Uber will appear. Out of thin air, preferably with seat warmers. The glowing letters mocked me, still searching. My brother's farewell party was starting in less than an hour. Noah would kill me if I showed up late, and honestly, he'd kill me if he knew I was sitting alone at a deserted Harborview bus stop at dusk, with only my camera bag and a half-charged phone. Great send-off for the responsible little sister, huh? I checked the time. I was supposed to pick up Noah's surprise cake from Sugar and Slate, the bakery with the peppermint-striped boxes and the cult following. I'd ordered it 2 weeks ago. It was his favorite, 3 layers of dark chocolate sponge, fudge frosting, and a pudding center decadent enough to clog arteries on sight. He only allowed himself to eat it once a year, on his birthday. But he was about to disappear to Central America for 12 months, so I decided a farewell indulgence was justified. Problem: the bakery closed in less than half an hour, and the rain had turned my world into a watercolor painting someone had left under a faucet. I scrolled through options in my head. Bus line? Didn't run on weekends. Taxi? This was Harborview, not Manhattan. Cabs were mythical creatures. Friends? Most didn't have cars. The one who did, Sarah, was stuck at some embassy reception until late, which left calling my brother. The last thing I wanted. Noah was protective on a good day, and borderline tyrannical on a bad one. Ever since the incident, a phrase whispered in our family with capital letters, he'd taken it upon himself to be my personal security guard. He didn't need the extra material for his medical martyr complex, thank you very much. But my options were precisely 0. I sucked in a breath, pressed his name, and held the phone to my ear. 1 ring. 2. 3. Come on, I whispered. Finally, his voice. What's wrong? I grimaced. No hello, no how are you. Just straight into panic mode. Wow. Love the warmth, brother dearest. What makes you think anything's wrong? Because you called me. His scoff was loud, even over the party noise in the background. You never call unless you're in trouble. Okay, fair point. I wouldn't say trouble, I hedged. More like stranded. No ride, no buses, stuck at the South Point Pier bus shelter. And it's raining sideways. Christ, Lila, he groaned. That's an hour from campus. What the hell are you doing there? Don't be dramatic. It was 30 minutes when the roads weren't lakes. I had an engagement shoot. It ran long. I figured I'd grab an Uber home. Clearly, I figured wrong thunder rolled overhead like some angry god shaking dice. I huddled deeper under the roof, though the rain still managed to find me, cold, stinging pinpricks against my neck. Then, rustling. A muffled laugh, a squeal. My eyes widened. Noah, are you seriously hooking up right now, while we're on the phone? A pause, then unapologetic. Technically, no. I gagged. Do not define technically. Do not. Relax. One of the guys took my car to get more ice. But don't worry, I'll send someone. Drop me your location and keep your pepper spray handy. Pepper spray? Really? You mean the 8-pack you gave me for my birthday? Still unopened, by the way. You're welcome? His voice was maddeningly smug. Stay put. He'll be there soon. He? Noah. Wait. Who's he? Noah. Too late. Click. I stared at my phone in horror. The one time I wanted details, my brother vanished into his overprotective fog. I slumped against the bench. Great. Noah had dozens of friends, and any of them could show up. Worst case, he'd send someone even more obnoxious than him. Best case? Actually, there was no best case. I shifted, trying to keep warm. My cracked leather camera bag pressed against my side. The memory card from today's shoot rattled inside, a reminder that I had editing to do if I ever escaped this shelter. My phobia hummed under my ribs, as it always did when water pooled too deep nearby. Rain isn't an ocean, I reminded myself. Rain isn't going to drag you under. It was full dark now, the harbor lights glowing faintly through mist. I was beginning to suspect Noah's mystery savior wasn't coming when two piercing beams of headlights cut through the rain. My heart jolted. Stranger? Psycho? Murderer? The car glided closer. A sleek, black Aston Martin. My relief lasted exactly 2 seconds before it morphed into horror, because behind the wheel was Damien Wolf. Of course. Of course Noah would send his best friend, the one man in Harborview I'd rather drown than accept a ride from. Damien was not the rescuing type. He was the ruin you with a glance type, the kind of man who could dismantle your confidence with a single arched brow and then walk away unruffled while you questioned your entire existence. The passenger window hummed down. Rain misted into the interior, but he didn't flinch. Get in. He didn't raise his voice, he never did. But I heard him over the storm, as clearly as if the weather bowed to his command. I froze. My brain screamed no, but my legs betrayed me. Slowly, I shoved off the bench and opened the door. Inside smelled of expensive cologne and buttery leather. I perched on the seat edge like an intruder in a cathedral, praying I wouldn't ruin anything with my damp jeans. Thanks, I tried. My voice sounded too bright, like tinfoil in a thundercloud. I appreciate it. Silence. He drove. Damien's driving matched everything else about him. Smooth, precise, efficient. The kind of control that made you want to both slap him and ask for lessons. I glanced sideways. Strong jawline, green eyes colder than the rain outside, hair that managed to be perfectly tousled, even in a storm. Damien Wolf looked like he'd been carved from marble and then taught how to glower. I reminded myself, he is Noah's best friend, not yours. He is also infuriating, arrogant, and emotionally allergic. So, I cleared my throat. Going to Noah's party tonight? Yes. And conversation dead. My brain scrambled for distractions. Cake. Crap. The cake. I twisted toward him, plastering on a smile. Don't kill me, but we need to stop by Sugar and Slate. Quick pickup. 5 minutes, tops. No. He didn't glance over. We're already late. It's important. My voice grew wheedling. Noah's farewell cake. Death by chocolate. He's leaving the country. One last chance for his favorite dessert. Stop. His knuckles tightened against the wheel. I blinked. Was that tension? On perfect, unflappable Damien Wolf? Listen, if I take you to the bakery, will you stop talking? A grin spread across my face. Absolutely. His mouth flattened. Fine. Lila Hartman, 1. Damien Wolf, 0. The bakery was warm light against the rain, neon script glowing through the glass. I unbuckled, half out the door, when his hand closed around my arm. Heat shot through me like lightning. His grip wasn't hard, but it was scorching, an unwelcome awareness blooming under my skin. What? My voice cracked. You can't go in like that. His gaze flicked toward my chest. Confused, I looked down, then yelped. My white t-shirt had turned into cling film. Red lace bra, bold as a neon sign, nipples obvious courtesy of air conditioning. Blood flooded my cheeks. Was it like this the whole time? Yes. You could have told me. I just did. My mortification burned hotter than the storm. Fine. Lend me your jacket. No. He cut the engine. I'll go. Before I could argue, he was out of the car, umbrella snapping open with military precision. He moved like a panther, fluid, deliberate, lethal even buying cake. I sank into the seat, tugging his abandoned jacket around me anyway. It smelled of cedar and something sharper, like smoke over ice. Unfair that even his clothes had presence. Minutes later he returned, box balanced neatly under one arm. Sugar and Slate's signature pink and mint green stripes looked oddly delicate in his hands. He deposited it in my lap without ceremony and slid back behind the wheel. I peeked inside, confirming the fudge frosting gleamed in perfect swirls. Relief loosened my shoulders. Thank you. Honestly, this means a lot. I narrowed my eyes. Do you ever smile? What would be the point? It might cure your condition. He flicked a glance my way. Condition? Stick up the ass-itis. For half a second, I swore I saw his mouth twitch. Then he turned back to the road, as if humor were beneath him. You made a joke, I gasped. I did no such thing. Explain why you were at South Point alone. He swerved the subject so fast I nearly whiplashed. Engagement shoot. Clients insisted on the pier. I thought Uber would. Never trust what you can't control. He cut in. My teeth clenched. Thank you, Mr. Control Freak. His silence said I wasn't worth the breath. Typical. By the time we pulled up in front of my house, my annoyance had curdled into something sharper, something dangerously close to fascination. Next door, Noah's place blazed with lights and laughter. I grabbed the cake, hand on the door handle. For the record, my brother has terrible taste in friends. I added, quieter. But thanks for the ride. I stepped into drizzle, inhaled damp earth and the hydrangeas blooming by the porch. The storm had finally softened, but my pulse hadn't. Behind me, Damien's car idled for a moment, headlights like watchful eyes. Then, without a word, he drove away. I exhaled hard. He was infuriating. He was cold. He was him. And God help me, I had a feeling this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. Damien. We were 20 minutes into Noah's farewell party when I started counting the exits. Old habit, not because I was expecting trouble. Harborview isn't exactly a war zone, but because the body remembers what the mind would rather forget. 2 sliding doors to the deck, 1 narrow hallway to the front porch, another to the kitchen by the mudroom. Windows that could take a shoulder if necessary, though the panes had been replaced recently. I could see the sheen in the glass. Are you even listening? The blonde in front of me, impossible to miss in a dress that could have doubled as a headband, tilted her face up. She had a smile that belonged in a bar commercial. Glossy, uncomplicated, exactly the kind of smile that used to be useful. I heard you, I said, and took a slow sip of whiskey. The ice clicked against crystal. You were saying something about privacy. Her lashes fluttered. We could, or we could stay right here. I'm flexible. Her hand drifted to my forearm like it was practicing for a product demo. My friend's flexible too. On cue, a petite brunette materialized with a smirk. The sort of tag team maneuver that would have worked on 90% of the men in this house. Not because men are idiots, though empirically we are, but because most of them don't have a rule set as unyielding as mine. I don't do tender. I don't do intimacy. I do terms, kept exactly as agreed. No kissing, no face-to-face, no surprises. People think they want that until they're in the moment. Then they try to trade up to see if they can tilt the arrangement into something else. That's when the door opens and they find themselves outside, wondering how the weather changed so fast. The blonde laughed, leaning close enough that perfume gathered at the base of my throat. Well? Not tonight. I rotated the glass and watched the amber catch the lamp, a captive sun in a square of cut crystal. It's a farewell party. She followed my gaze to the center of the room, where Noah held court like Harborview's vote for most likely to be missed. He sprawled on the couch he hadn't managed to haul to storage yet. Half the room draped over him, adoration masquerading as friendship. It wasn't entirely undeserved. Noah made people feel like they were the only person in a crowded room. It's a gift. It also makes exits more complicated, which is why I prefer to avoid having to make them. He can come too, the brunette chirped, and the blonde snorted as if they'd invented a language. I didn't answer. Desperation had a scent. It always did. It cut through bergamot and vanilla, left a film on the tongue like overripe fruit. I lifted my eyes above their heads and scanned for something that wasn't boring. I found it in a sound, a laugh, silver and bright, cut through Beyoncé, through clinking bottles and the slap of someone's palm against a brotherly shoulder. It sounded like the first spill of sunlight when you open blinds too fast. Lila. She was near the kitchen, a ring of friends orbiting her. She said something with her hands, and they laughed again, the way people laugh when they feel safe. She changed into a dress the color of a bruised plum, and it moved when she moved, skimming her knees, whispering over skin that wouldn't hold a mark if you pressed a finger there. I stared longer than was advisable. She didn't notice until she did, and when she did, pink touched her cheeks and she looked away. Not coy. Startled. It was too easy to imagine her back in my passenger seat an hour earlier, soaked through, stubborn mouth set while she negotiated a detour like she was trying to bargain with weather. The memory flared. Red lace, a flash of the utterly avoidable. And I put the brakes on my thoughts so hard I could smell burnt rubber. Number. A line is a line. I've lived with my lines longer than I've lived with most people. Damien. Noah materialized at my elbow. He was flushed, hair mussed, shirt untucked, proud of himself in a way that would get him killed if life weren't so strangely charmed in his presence. I held my glass out, and he clinked a beer can against it with a grin that had closed 1,000 tabs for him when he was too drunk to type his password. You made it, he said. You told me it was mandatory. I gave the women a glance significant enough to be courteous. They drifted away to hunt where the prey lifted its head instead of burying it in a tumbler. Don't look so thrilled, he said, amused. You can leave after the sentimental part, which is later. Maybe. If I remember, I won't wait around to find out. I scanned the room again, locating the rest of the hazards and half the advantages. Noah took a breath like he was preparing to say something difficult. He failed at looking serious, but I'll grant he tried. I want to ask you a favor. No friendship bracelets, I said automatically. God, no. I have taste his mouth twisted. It's Lila. My hand paused an inch from my face. I completed the motion because incomplete motions get noticed. What about her? She's fine, he said, and then talked the way people talk when they're trying to convince themselves that they're not worried. She's Lila. She still thinks a stranger will help you pick up your groceries if you drop the bag. She still thinks sending a location pin is paranoid, unless she's hiking. I'll be in Guatemala with spotty reception, and... He blew out a breath. Her idiot ex has been texting from fake numbers. Nothing actionable yet. But still, I didn't ask why she dated an idiot. People date idiots all the time. Charm covers a multitude of defects. I did not ask whether Noah had threatened to remove the idiot's limbs with a dull spoon. Of course he had. He doesn't have many modes, but protective older brother is a permanent one. "I'll check in," I said. He shook his head. "Not check in." "I mean, yes, check in. But more than that. Keep an eye. If she needs anything." He looked like he wanted to say emotional support, thought better, and downgraded to a ride, because we both know what I am and what I'm not. Define anything. I was stalling. I knew it. He knew it. "Not that," he said, reading me the way he reads a play. "She's not your type. You're not hers. Relax. I'm not asking for a bodyguard, just someone who will answer at 3 a.m. without complaining. You don't sleep anyway." "Thank you for diagnosing me." I finished the whiskey and set the glass on a shelf that might survive this crowd. "Fine. I'll handle it." Relief washed over his face so fast I had to look away. Gratitude makes my skin itch. Promises, on the other hand, settle into the bones. I don't make many. When I do, I weld them shut. It must have shown on my face, the welding, because the air around me thinned for a second, the way it does when memory breaches the wall you keep telling yourself is load-bearing. The smell always arrives first. Iron and alcohol, a citrus cleaner that failed to do anything but layer the scene with a nauseating gloss. Then the color, thick and too bright in a room that had been all warm wood and laughter an hour before. A wool rug with a fringe that didn't quite lie flat because of the way my mother liked it, and that fringe clotted with what won't wash out, no matter how hard you scrub. I swallowed. The room snapped back. Deck lights. College kids making decisions they won't remember. Someone chanting chug in the kitchen like it meant anything. Noah squeezed my shoulder without pretending to understand what passed over my face. He's smarter than his grades. He's careful where he pretends ignorance. "You're the best," he said, because I'd given him the thing he needed most, the ability to leave without wondering if he'd abandoned something. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the vibration pattern that had its own lane in my attention. I stepped out onto the deck. The rain had unspooled into a fine mist. Harbor view spread itself beyond the railing. String lights and slow cars, boats nodding in their berths. The cedar boards were slick. I moved toward the edge where the sound of the party broke up into harmless fragments. "Diadko," I said, and leaned one shoulder against the cold post. "Damien," my uncle rasped. His voice carried a lifetime of cigarettes and immigrant grit. We talk in English because he likes to practice, and because my Ukrainian is a muscle, I flex less since the move. "I hope I don't interrupt. You never do." I watched a couple on the lawn try to dance without slipping. "We're at a neighborhood ritual." "Ah, the you go I stay party a drag, a cough. I won't keep you." "How's our matter?" "Advancing." The word settled like a chess piece in the center of the board. "We have a meeting with the broker Monday. The shell companies are insulated. The filings will look ordinary until it's too late to unwind." "And him?" He didn't say the name. We don't say it unless we have to. Names have a way of prying old doors open. "He has no idea a storm is rolling in." I let myself enjoy the sentence. "The report went to his partner this afternoon. The partner won't be able to resist the leak. He'll think he stumbled across it. He'll think he's righteous. He's neither my uncle made a pleased noise." "Your father would have admired your patience. He would have told me to go faster," I said, and the words did what they always do in my mouth. Turned to ash while I swore I didn't notice. "We're close." "Good. Finish one life, begin another drag." "And the company?" Helios Urban? I said. We don't call it my company. Technically, it isn't. I prefer it that way. Board meets next Thursday. Seattle office is happy. Philadelphia is Philadelphia. The last word carried 3 meanings, and none of them necessary to say out loud. I'll fly out and be back by morning. You should eat, he said abruptly, then covered the concern with a joke. I hear parties have food. Not the kind I like. I watched the kitchen through the sliding glass. Lila laughed again, head tipped back, and the sound reached the deck in a thinner version of itself that still carried heat. I'll call you after Monday. Do that. He softened, just enough to let light through the mesh. Spicy Niku. The call clicked off. I breathed once, twice, and put the phone away. The mist freckled my sleeves. I don't get cold easily, but for a second the air bit like water before dawn. Everything good? Noah called from the door, words trailing the music. Better than good. I walked back in, and the warmth hit like a wall. I need to borrow your kitchen island for 10 minutes. For what? A demonstration, I said, of how to write a contract even a hurricane can't shake. He blinked, then grinned the way you do when your friend's nonsense amuses you on principle. Be my guest. I didn't go to the island immediately. I went to Lila first. She was licking frosting off a plastic knife, a hazard in itself, and arguing with the girl in the gold skirt about whether the cake needed more photographs before consumption. The cake did not. Cakes are meant to be eaten. Photographs are meant to happen, not be orchestrated until joy dies in captivity. Lila, I said. She jumped, then pretended she hadn't. Wolf, she replied, and wiped her hand on a napkin that wasn't up to the job. Do you ever appear like a normal person? Feet first, with footsteps? Yes, I said. You're just bad at hearing. Maybe your aura blocks sound waves. She held up a slice of Sugar and Slate's finest like a shield. Do you want? No, you don't. People like you don't eat cake. What are people like me? I asked, because I wanted to hear the taxonomy. She tilted her head, studying me the way she studies light before she moves a subject. You're the kind who knows how long it takes a storm front to move from the bay to the bluff without checking your phone. You count the exits, and you never take the last piece of anything because it means losing an advantage you can't quantify. You keep spare shirts in your trunk, and you always have a pen that writes on wet paper. It's not a difficult trick to see me, if you have eyes and patience. Most people keep their eyes for themselves. And yet you called me an asshole. She smiled, quick and bright. Observations are not endorsements. I nodded toward her plate. How much are you going to eat before you admit it's too rich? She took a defiant bite. Her eyes widened. It is indeed too rich, and she did the thing she does when she doesn't want to concede. Talked about something else. Thank you for earlier, she said, quieter. I know I said that already, but thank you. I don't accept gratitude well. It tries to graft itself to whatever it touches. You're welcome, I said, because manners are a form of clean line. Try not to look so pained while you say it. Her mouth curved. Noah told me you're allergic to kindness. I'm allergic to performative anything. She grinned, and for a second I forgot the deck, the exits, the rules. That was another reason I avoid parties. The edges blur. Noah rescued me from the sudden softness by thumping the island with both palms. Ladies, gentlemen, and people who exist on planes we cannot perceive, he announced. If I could have your attention for 15 seconds, that will last at least a minute. A cheer rose, messy and affectionate. He launched into a speech that had the decency to be brief. He thanked his professors, his mother, his exes, for teaching me time management, and his sister, who rolled her eyes so hard I heard it, and then he said the only thing that mattered in a crowd like this. Eat. Drink. Don't break my landlord's windows. While they roared, I pulled a Sharpie from the drawer nearest the stove and a stack of index cards from the same place every student house keeps them. The catch-all bowl of things whose function is future usefulness. I wrote 4 words on the top card and slid it onto the island in front of Lila. Read, agree. Initial here. Her eyebrows shot up. What is this, a party indeed? Terms, I said. You like terms. They keep the ocean where it belongs. Her face changed, fractionally, but enough. The ocean is the place where her memory is sliced ragged. She took the card. Rule 1, I said. You text me when you leave campus after 10 p.m. You don't need permission. You just text. She made a show of rolling her eyes, but she didn't argue. Fine. Rule 2. If the man whose existence we aren't dignifying with a name contacts you again, you forward the message. You do not reply. You do not dignify either. She set the card down and reached for the Sharpie. Fine. Rule 3. You do not walk alone when the wind shifts hard off the bay. You think I'm superstitious? I shrugged. I am. Indulge me. That's a superstition? It's Harborview, I said. We have our own calendar. She pressed the nib to the paper and initialed in looping letters that made space for themselves even on a small line. And Rule 4? You call, I said, and let it be all business. Whatever the hour. No preamble. I pick up. I don't lecture you until after you're safe. Noah was watching from 3 feet away with an expression I recognized. The look of a man who wants to cheer and knows better. Lila's mouth tilted like she had a joke and decided it could wait. Demonstration over? She asked. Almost. I picked up the card. Rule 5. There's a 5th? Rule 5. I repeated, because some words like the sound of themselves. You don't confuse protection with control. If I'm overstepping, you say so. I will correct. Something in her posture shifted. The laugh-prone shoulders straightened. The humor didn't leave, but it wasn't the whole thing anymore. You promise? I don't write terms I don't keep. Her eyes met mine. Stormlight lives differently in some eyes. It gathers. It doesn't scatter. Okay, she said. Okay. We were still looking at each other when the front door slammed open and a gust barreled down the hallway. Someone shouted from the porch, panicked, sloppy. Gold Skirt squealed. My hand put the index card in my pocket without consulting me, because that's what it does with documents it might need later. Fireworks! A voice yelled. We have fireworks! Of course they did. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Nothing good ever happened in a college town after someone said I found fireworks. I made it to the porch in 3 strides. A trio of physics majors, recognizable by the smugness that only correct equations can produce, brandished a shoebox of artillery shells like they'd been waiting for me to arrive and bless the proceedings. Not happening, I said. Dude, it's legal. In which universe? I asked. Step 1, read the instructions. Step 2, do the opposite. Step 3, don't burn down your landlord's siding. I took the box, flipped the lid, and pulled out the single thing in there that wouldn't put someone in the emergency room. Sparklers. You can have these. Outside the fence, away from anything with a mortgage, they groaned like I'd canceled a holiday. I sent them into the drizzle with a lighter and one stern look. The rest of the box went on top of the fridge, where none of them would see it again tonight. When I turned back, Lila stood at the edge of the dining room, watching. Not appraising, not impressed. Something else. Something softer and more dangerous than either. I looked away first. The party thinned around midnight. Harborview requires bedtimes of its residents eventually, even the stubborn ones. Noah ended up on the couch again with a crown someone had made from tinfoil and a stolen ribbon. I hauled the nearest blanket over him to encourage dignity and stepped over 2 snoring undergrads on my way to the door. Outside, the mist had thickened to a fine rain. Streetlights painted the wet road with coins. "Wolf?" I didn't jump. She wanted me to. I could hear it in the way she said my name. I turned and found Lila on the porch with a hoodie pulled over her curls and a pair of sneakers in her hand, like she'd been halfway to bed and changed her mind. "You're leaving," she said. "That's what it looks like." I shoved my hands into my coat pockets. I don't fidget. I compartmentalize. It's different. "You should be asleep." "I have to hide what's left of the cake from the hyenas." She made a face. "And I wanted to say, I signed your terms." I raised a brow. "I noticed." "That was decent," she said, as if she weren't sure if the compliment had permission to be said out loud. "Most people pretend protection is a gift you have to say thank you for forever." "You didn't do that." "I don't do forever," I said. "I do the next necessary thing." She toyed with the lace of her sneaker. "Sometimes the next necessary thing is letting someone in." "It isn't," I said, before I could stop myself. "Not for me." Her mouth softened, and for a second I thought she might reach out, hand to my sleeve the way people do when they're trying to bridge a gap with texture. She didn't. She's better at boundaries than she pretends. "Good night, Damien," she said, and it was simple and exactly the right size. "Good night, Lila." I walked to the car. Water purled on the hood. I got in, didn't start the engine yet. I watched the house for a minute, the dark shapes moving in windows. The way a home looks right after it's been full, swollen around the edges, air warmer than it ought to be. My phone buzzed once on the passenger seat, an alert I'd set for a name I'd told myself I could forget tonight if I worked hard enough. The name appeared, cool as a threat, on my screen. The message was short and fatalistic, the way men write when they think they're inevitable. "We should talk. You can't run this forever." I exhaled through my nose. I didn't keep the text. I don't keep trash. I took a photo of the number and slid it into the folder that eats men for breakfast. Then I deleted the message and the name and the residue they leave. I started the engine. The wipers cleared the glass. I pulled away from Noah's house and let the road take me the long way around the harbor, where the lights string themselves like promises people make when they mean it. I don't put faith in promises. I put faith in pressure, in force, in a line I draw and then enforce until I don't have to draw it again. I had given Noah my word. It would carry the weight I assigned it. I would answer at 3 a.m. I would stand where the wind came hard off the bay and pretend I didn't hear the sea. I drove past Sugar and Slate, closed now, a neon sign ghostly against its own reflection in the wet pavement. I thought of Lila under a bus shelter, telling herself, rain isn't an ocean, while the outline of fear tried to remind her that water doesn't care about our distinctions. My uncle's voice threaded back through the engine noise. Finish one life, begin another. He'd meant the man we were going to end. He hadn't meant me. He never does. That's fine. I don't need him to. At a red light, I took the index card from my pocket and held it up to the dashboard glow. 5 rules. 2 sets of initials. My handwriting, tidy enough to pass for a contract. Her loops, declarative. I flipped it over. The backside was blank. I wrote a 6th rule there. Not to show her? Not yet. For me. Rule 6. Don't mistake ruin for rescue. The light turned green. I slid the card back into my pocket, Harbor view blurred into streaks of yellow and white, then clarified into houses and fences, and the flash of a raccoon's small, arrogant face vanishing into shrubs. The ocean was a rumor behind the neighborhoods, a long inhale you could hear if you didn't fill your head with other sounds. I don't like rumors. I prefer information. This year would test how much I could pretend those were the same thing. Back at my place, the alarm chirped as I disarmed it. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, lined my shoes next to the other shoes like order could outrun chaos if you only did it thoroughly enough. The condo was glass and steel, and everything easy to wipe down. It faced the water, because I believe in swallowing your fears whole or not at all. I poured a second whiskey and didn't drink it. I stood at the window and watched the harbor be itself. Down there somewhere a girl had stood in the rain and refused to be embarrassed into invisibility. Up here, a man who knows better than most what the world does to softness wrote rules like they work for every storm. I don't know if I slept. Morning arrived anyway. It always does. The phone woke when the sun did, a calendar notification for 2 meetings I'd set in motion months ago. The broker. The first thread in a net I'd been weaving so long it should have chafed me raw by now. It doesn't. It fits like the skin you stop noticing until something burns it. Before I dressed, I texted a number I'd been using for a decade when I needed a quiet car and a quieter driver. Need the long route to Seattle tomorrow. Wheels down at 6, back the same night. The reply came 3 seconds later, like always. Done. Same hanger. Then I texted another number that has no name attached to it because names are how things leak. Pull everything from last week's grant lists. Westbridge, student organization budgets. Also, 3 months of incident reports, campus security, anything near South Point Pier. The reply? On it. A lock emoji, a shark. Men in my employer paid too much to use emojis. I let it stand tonight. I didn't have the energy to correct culture. I showered, I shaved, I dressed. When I slid my wallet into my inner pocket, the edge of an index card nudged my fingers. I tapped it twice. Promises are cages you build for yourself. Most people file the bars down. I paint mine. I make them look like desires so no one tries to break them for me. At 7:10, my phone lit with a new text. Not mine, hers. Testing your rule, Wolf. Going to the co-op before class. 20 minutes there, back, bright daylight, don't have a cow. I stared at the language, at the way she used my name for punctuation. Then I typed one word. Received, 3 dots. Is that all? No lecture until after you're safe. Rule 4. A beat. Then a digital eye roll, perfectly rendered in typing across nothing. Fine, Mr. Literal. Bye. I put the phone face down on the counter and let something I couldn't name spread between my ribs, like a bruise you press to check if it still hurts. It did. I picked up the phone again. If someone bothers you before noon, tell them your older brother will remove their kneecaps. If after noon, tell them I will. Her reply arrived with an image, a slice of cake, stolen, with a bite out of it the size of defiance. Bribing me this early? She wrote, shameless. I didn't answer. Some things don't need answers. They need time. I slipped the index card into the safe behind the second shelf, where the treaty drafts and the kill switches lived. I closed the door. I listened to the mechanism do what it was designed to do. Then I sat down to map a year in which I would end a man, defend a girl who refused to be reduced, and pretend, daily, that the ocean and the rain obey different laws. Chapter 3. Lila. I hope you appreciate what a good friend I am, Jules announced, deadpan, as we squelched across the front lawn in borrowed rain boots at an hour that should be illegal. Dragging myself out of bed at the butt crack of dawn to help your brother clean and pack when I don't even like the dude. I'm expecting a plaque. You'll get a caramel mocha from the morning roast, I said, linking my arm through hers and steering her around a puddle that had ambitions of becoming a koi pond. Large, extra crunch toppings, a drizzle that could drown a toddler. Jules considered this, then yawned so wide I saw her tonsils. Acceptable. Barely. She cut me a sideways look beneath her hood. Add a bacon cheddar biscuit, and I'll pretend not to judge your life choices for the next 3 hours. Done. For the next 2 hours, she amended. I'm not a saint. Jules did not like Noah. Noah did not like Jules. It baffled me because they were, in horrifying ways, similar. Charismatic, fast-talking, terminally confident, with a flair for spectacle and a track record of leaving admirers in their wake. If charm were a contact sport, they'd both be MVPs. Jules, with her cinematic red hair and hourglass everything, moved through campus like gravity owed her a favor. She called herself a walking Jessica Rabbit reference before anyone else could, though she'd punch you, lightly, if you used the initials. She complained constantly about her back and her double Ds, and how nothing cute came in architecturally supportive, which I tried to pity but often found difficult, while I was petitioning the universe to add an extra cup size to the itty-bitty titty committee. One member, me. In solidarity, I'd suggested there should be a Venmo for boobs. Women could send and receive cup sizes like tips. Mutual aid, but make it mammaries, Jules had said solemnly, and then changed my phone contact to Leela Venmo for boobs Hartman. Noah, meanwhile, had always been the golden retriever of men. Handsome in a way that made grandmas pinch cheeks and baristas remember orders, 6'2", black hair, cheekbones that had no business on a medical volunteer, with a grin that could talk expired milk into reconsidering. He knew it too. If we ever let him commission the statue he clearly believed the world deserved, he'd pose shirtless, stethoscope draped casually like a scarf. We stepped into his open doorway without knocking. The house was quieter than last night's chaos, a surprising amount accomplished for someone who partied like he had a doctorate in it. Boxes lined the hall. The living room was eerily bare, except for the couch, a stack of pans, and the truly awful abstract painting, Noah insisted, tied the room together. Josh? I called, out of habit more than necessity. Noah's voice carries like a brass instrument when he wants it to. And yes, my brother's name is Noah. But in the long tradition of older siblings, he responds to a rotating set of nicknames ranging from, "Sir, please stop," to emotional support tyrant. Somewhere upstairs, something thumped. "Where are you?" "Bedroom." His voice floated down, followed by a soft curse and another thump. A minute later, he appeared in gym shorts and zero shame, hauling a taped box marked "Donate." He dropped it on the kitchen counter with a flourish, and then flexed, as if the box had requested a show. I held up both hands like a crossing guard. "Put a shirt on. Protect our retinas. And deprive J.R. of her morning eye candy?" he asked, scandalized. "Call me Jessica Rabbit one more time, and I'll set your hair on fire," Jules said sweetly from the floor, where she'd sat down cross-legged like a disgruntled toddler. "Also, I've seen better abs at the campus gym." "Methinks the lady doth protest too much," Noah said, patting his six-pack like it had achieved something noble. "The only thing you'll be losing is—" "Okay," I windmilled my arms. "Nope, we are not finishing that sentence. Boundaries, boxes, focus." To their credit, they behaved for a solid 90 minutes. We wrapped mugs, evacuated the pantry of ancient oatmeal, taped up the collapse-prone spice tower, and argued gently about whether one can own too many wooden spoons. Yes, Noah could start an Etsy shop. By the time the rental SUV looked like a Tetris game played by an anxious god, Only two things remained: the couch, which someone would collect later, and the abstract monstrosity on the living room wall. "Tell me you're donating this," I said, pointing as if it might bite. "Nah. Leave it," Noah said. "For who?" The lease didn't have a new name on it yet, and it was July. The student stampede hadn't started. "Unless you're bequeathing it to the next generation as a cautionary tale." He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled in a way that made my stomach tighten. Mischief looks better on him than it does on anyone else I know. It also precedes 90% of my headaches. "Don't," I warned. The low purr of a powerful engine rolled through the open windows like a cat deciding whether to own you. I knew that sound. So did my cortisol. Noah's smile widened. "As a matter of fact..." Jules and I looked at each other and then sprinted to the front door, nearly taking out a box of cutlery in our rush. The driveway held a sleek black Aston Martin, presence humming even with the engine off. The door opened. Damien Wolfe stepped out in aviators, dark jeans, and a black button-down with the sleeves rolled to forearms that had clearly accepted their job description, and then asked for a raise. He took off his sunglasses and assessed us with the same neutral patience he'd use on a hostile boardroom. The morning seemed to adjust itself around him, like air around a plane wing. "Morning," he said, and somehow made it sound like a complete evaluation. "That's Damien," I said stupidly, because my brain lagged when faced with this level of calm weaponized. "That's..." Words. Where? "Lookin' mighty fine," Jules murmured, then elbowed me so pointedly I nearly fell down the steps. "Are we taking a vote on him moving in shirtless?" Because I'm a yes, I scowled at her. "He's a jerk." "Name one dangerously hot man who isn't." She gave Damien a speculative once-over. "Good morning, Mr. Wolfe. Do you accept feedback in the form of unsolicited thirst?" Damien did not dignify this with a response. He did, to my absolute horror, catch Noah's hand in a brief shake that looked like a tiny treaty. "Where's the key?" he asked. "In the kitchen drawer." "Under the junk. Be careful, there's a rogue tape measure in there." It bites. Noah slapped him on the shoulder like there wasn't a thundercloud attached to that trapezius. "Glad you're here." "What is happening?" I asked, more to the universe than to either of them, because if the universe had started listening, it owed me interest. "Why is he here? Why is his car here? Why is his face here?" Noah slung an arm around my shoulders and squeezed. "Little sis, meet your new neighbor." The world tilted. Not a lot, just enough for my coffee-deprived stomach to protest. I jerked out from under his arm. "No." Damien slid his sunglasses into his shirt pocket and looked at his watch. It was rude that even his watch had gravitas. "The movers will be here at 9. "Cancel them," I snapped. "Call them and cancel, and then go home to your steel and glass lair and your scary art and your knives you probably keep alphabetized." "Alphabetization is for files," he said mildly. "Knives are arranged by purpose." Jules made a noise of appreciation. "A man of systems." "I'm listening." "You don't have to listen," Noah said, pointing at her without looking. "You do have to refrain from chaos while I'm gone." "I don't create chaos. I curate it." Jules tossed her hair. "Also, you don't run my life." Noah glared. "I don't care what you do with your life." "I care when you drag my sister into your schemes." Newsflash: your sister is a consenting adult who willingly participates and has more fun as a result. I rubbed my temples. "Children. Please." Noah exhaled, dialed down the sibling alpha dial, and tried for soothing. "He's house-sitting," he said. "I'm moving back next year." "It makes sense. It does not make sense." I said. There are so many other houses he could sit. Mansions, yachts, oil rigs. Oil rigs are not houses, Damien said. This isn't about the house, I said, inhaling sharply and bracing for the part where I admitted the obvious. It's about me. Noah, you promised you wouldn't do this. Promised I wouldn't care if a trust fund mannequin kept harassing you? His voice softened. I can't not care, Lila. I flinched. I hated that Liam's name, even not said, lived in our conversations like mold. He'd been texting from unknown numbers, showing up at the Mariner Gallery where I worked, contrite in crisp shirts. I wasn't in love with him. Honestly, I wasn't sure I'd been in like, but the whole thing had rubbed every raw place in my chest into a fresh sting, and the way the world coddled men who didn't take no had me clenching my jaw so much my dentist would comment. I can handle myself, I said, because it was true, and also because it was a sentence I needed to say out loud to believe. I have friends. I have pepper spray. I have a brother with bad ideas, and a best friend with worse flattered, Jules murmured. And I have terms, a quiet voice added from the doorway. Damien, not pushing, just placing the card on the kitchen island like a chess piece you don't have to acknowledge to know it changed the board. I stared at the index card, the one from last night, 5 rules in tidy writing I secretly liked too much, and rage and relief did a confused dance in my ribs. The rules had soothed some secret part of me that wanted a container. The man who wrote them made me want to kick a container down the stairs. Fine, I said. House sit. Sit all the houses. Sit this entire block. But do not say the words, I told you so to me even once, or I will smother you with a decorative pillow in your sleep. Noted, he said. Noah looked between us, pleased in a way that made me want to drop-kick him and then bring him a snack. Group hug, he offered. Try it and die, both Jules and Damien said in perfect unison. They stared at each other in mutual disgust at the overlap. I might have laughed if I weren't busy negotiating the redecoration plans of my personal hell. We got back to work. Noah signed forms. I labeled cables in a language future anthropologists would deem creative. And Jules curated a playlist entitled Packing Butt, Make It Sexy, which turned out to be 90 minutes of saxophone and Donna Summer. Around 9, the moving truck exhaled into the driveway, and 3 men with the forearms of Greek statues carried in boxes with D. Wolf stenciled in an unfriendly font. I tried to look disinterested. I failed. Don't look inside the one labeled kitchen unless you're prepared to rethink your entire pan situation, Jules whispered, low enough that only I heard. Also, he owns a mandolin slicer. That means something. It means he has a vendetta against fingertips, I whispered back. Damien walked past us carrying a slim black case and a small potted rosemary bush. The juxtaposition did something confusing to my heartbeat. He paused, glanced at the bush as if surprised to see it in his own hand, and then set it on Noah's porch with gentle care, like it was a living thing or something, which, okay, it was, but still. The corners of my mouth betrayed me by softening. Don't humanize him, I muttered to myself. He's not a person. He's a spreadsheet that learned to drive. You love spreadsheets, Jules said. Stop lying to your brand. By noon, the house looked like a model home that had decided to diet. Noah and I loaded the last bag into the SUV and shut the trunk with a thunk that felt like a countdown. He had 3 hours to get to the airport. I had a year to pretend I was fine. Want a ride to the morning roast? I asked Jules. Bribe time. Already ordered ahead, she said, brandishing her phone with the air of someone who has never waited for caffeine in her life. We can walk. I'll get your brother his pre-flight good luck scone, and then I'll consider forgiving him for existing. Noah rolled his eyes. Try to be nice while I'm gone, he said. No promises, she chirped. He pulled me into a hug so fast I didn't have time to prepare. He smelled like laundry detergent and dry shampoo and a little like last night's beer, and I pressed my face into his shoulder in a way that made my throat ache. You're going to be okay, he said into my hair. I made a noise that could mean anything. You too. He squeezed harder. Text me pictures of B, he said, meaning our mother's basset hound who lived with her in Annapolis and had opinions about puddles. And the hydrangeas. And yourself. Preferably smiling. Bossy, I muttered, water pooling in places it had no right to. He let me go. We did the dumb little handshake we'd invented at 12, then high-fived, then he kissed my forehead like he was about to leave for space. Hey, he added quieter. If you don't like him there, say so. I'll figure something else out, I swallowed. I'll be fine. He nodded because he wanted to believe me and because we are both very good at pretending the world is as stable as we need it to be. Then he climbed into the SUV, started it, and waved one more time through the open window. Bye, Jules. Don't corrupt my sister. She was pre-corrupted, Jules said cheerfully. Bon voyage, tiny dictator. He laughed, and then he was gone. The sound of his engine dwindled down Harborview Lane and vanished around the curve by the bay. The quiet that settled after surprised me. Parties leave a pressure in the air. Packing leaves a vacuum. I hugged myself and told my head to stop trying to run two feelings at once. Coffee, Jules said briskly, sensing the moment and bulldozing it. Now. We cut across the lawn and reached the sidewalk, only to be intercepted by a rosemary bush. Is that for me? I asked Damien, because he stood on Noah's porch again, the plant in his hand, looking like someone who had no idea what to do with something that smelled like lamb and memory. It's for the shared fence, he said, which is a sentence only a man with a calendar in his soul would say. It keeps mosquitoes away. It does not, I said, reflexive, because my brain had to cling to facts or I'd float away. Mosquitoes laugh at herbs. They go straight for ankles and irony. You can put it by the steps, Jules said, rescuing us both. It'll trick us into thinking we can cook. Damien nodded and set the plant at the exact center of the step, as if centering a plant made the world fair. He straightened and pulled his phone from his pocket. Text when you're back, he told me, and then added, because he must have seen the flare in my eyes. Rule 1. No editorial, I'll editorialize your face, I muttered, and then went with Jules, because retreat is a strategy and caffeine is a structural support. The morning roast smelled like cinnamon and ambition. We ordered caramel mocha with extra crunch for Jules, iced honey latte for me, and a good luck scone for Noah that we would pretend to eat on his behalf and then actually eat on ours. The barista with the eyebrow ring wrote lilac on my cup, as if my vibe were a color and not a person who tripped on rugs. You okay? Jules asked when we slid into our usual window seat. She said it lightly, like a pebble tossed onto a pond, not a stone dropped to the bottom. That's how she asks when she means it. I will be. My hands fiddled with the cardboard sleeve, picking at its seam. It's just change. You're good at change, she said. You photograph people right before their lives shift. You catch the breath. You'll catch this too. Sometimes the best pep talks are not pep talks at all. I rested my chin in my palm and watched Harborview stroll past outside. A mother pushing a stroller while a beagle carried its leash like a badge. A man in a cap watering a tomato plant army. A boy with a popsicle he clearly regretted because it was blue, and blue does not belong on a tongue. My phone buzzed. I didn't need to look to know who. I looked anyway. Wolf. Movers done by noon. Your brother packed badly. I'll fix it. I huffed, typed back without thinking. Hartman. If you touch his spice rack, he'll fly back and smite you. 3 dots. Then. Wolf. I don't recognize half of these. He owns mace in 4 varieties. I smiled into my cup and immediately stopped smiling because that felt like a slippery slope. Hartman. We're at roast. You want something? Jules choked on her biscuit. Don't invite him. It's just coffee, I said too quickly. So I can be polite and then never speak to him again for the rest of my life. The bell above the door jingled. A moment later, sunlight used Damien's shoulders as a suggestion. He filled space without crowding it. He scanned the room, assessed dangers. None, except for a toddler with a lollipop destined to become a weapon, and came to the counter. Good morning, he told the barista, and even his good morning sounded like a decision. He ordered an Americano, no room, and then stood beside our table with the air of someone who wouldn't sit unless invited and wouldn't flinch if he wasn't. Sit, Jules said, not because she wanted him to, but because she wanted to see what would happen if she told him to. He sat. He has no problem with commands, as long as he can pretend he issued them. You own a rosemary plant, I said, because I needed to tangle my brain on something harmless. I own 2, he said. The other one died. Jules snorted. You didn't own it then. It owned you. For 5 minutes he considered this, as if trying to decide whether it was offensive. Perhaps. We were just discussing change, I said, breaking the moment before it could settle like syrup. And how I'm bad at it. You're good at adaptation, he said, immediate, like he'd been waiting to correct me. There's a difference. Jules arched a brow. Look at you, dropping affirmations with your Americano. He ignored her. Adapting is recognizing the wind has shifted and tilting the sail. Changing is burning the boat and learning to swim. His gaze flicked to me. You already know the water. My throat tightened. I took a too big sip of latte and winced as the ice collided with my upper lip. I don't swim. He didn't argue. He didn't comfort. He just sipped his coffee and stared at a spot over my shoulder like it contained a plan. The stillness bothered me and calmed me at once. It made me want to throw a napkin at his face to see if he'd blink, and also to sit very, very quietly to keep the moment from breaking. Are we going to pretend not to talk about Liam? Jules asked bluntly, because she's a friend, and friends don't let infections fester. Or are we going to do what the emotionally mature do and weaponize our support? Damien's jaw ticked. I wanted to hug her and also crawl under the table. We're not talking about him, I said, too loud. We're talking about scones. Wrong table, Jules said, sending me a look that said later. Fine. We'll do triage after your brother texts from the gate. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a photo of Noah wearing a flimsy paper crown someone must have given him at TSA. Noah. Security made me take off my shoes, my belt, and my dignity. Gate C. Love you. Don't let JR redecorate my kitchen. I sent back 3 hearts and a photo of Jules flipping the camera off with a smile, then slipped my phone face down on the table and tried to breathe from someplace beneath my collarbone. When we left the coffee shop, Harborview's late morning had warmed into something lazy and gold. We walked back along the harbor, watched a boy in rubber boots scoop leaves from a storm drain like he was rescuing sea turtles, and then cut across the park to our houses. A police cruiser rolled past slowly, not menacing, just present. My shoulders stiffened, and then set themselves back down where they belonged. Damien's movers were gone. The rosemary bush stood at attention. The abstract painting glared at the shared wall like a mistake no one wanted to claim. "I'm going to shower and nap," Jules announced, "and then meet you at the gallery for the 4 o'clock shift so we can stare at the ceramic bird that costs more than my rent." She kissed my cheek and trotted toward her townhouse with the ease of someone born to heels. I turned toward my porch and nearly collided with a bouquet. Not roses, hydrangeas clipped from somewhere nearby, blooms the size of dinner plates, blue as a secret, a sticky note on the ribbon, for luck. I smiled, though the smile felt tacked on by pins. I carried them inside, filled a vase, and tried not to overthink the fact that Damien's text pinged in the middle of the water hiss from my tap. Wolf. "Board meeting Thursday. Seattle, back, same day. You'll text if you need anything." I stared, thumb hovering, then typed. "Hartman. You'll text if you need me to rescue your Rosemary from death. 3 dots. Wolf. The Rosemary will survive. It has better instincts than most people." "Arrogant Herb," I muttered, and set my phone down. By late afternoon, the day settled into its own rhythm. The gallery humming with air conditioning and quiet footsteps. My camera battery charging for a sunset shoot. Jules reading the artist statements out loud in a dramatic voice that made me love art less, but love her more. At 4:30, the door chimed and a man walked in. Khakis, golf polo, the squint of someone who believes it's all for him. Not Liam. Liam's cologne announces him 15 seconds before he arrives. This one smelled like money and lunch meetings. "Can I help you?" I asked, professional mode sliding over my face like a visor. He smiled without meaning it. "Looking for the curator." "That's me for today," Jules said brightly. "We're a rotating democracy." He glanced at me and then at the wall behind me, like something you could buy hid there. "Tell me about the Coastal series." I did. I talked about brushwork and negative space, about how the artist used salt to pull paint into the suggestion of tides. And while I talked, I watched him watch me, but not really see me. He wanted ownership without understanding. It's a common desire. It makes me itchy. He left without buying anything. Jules made a rude gesture at his back, like a tiny benediction. At 5, my phone buzzed. Unknown. "Hey, we should talk, or I'll swing by." I didn't have to ask who. The text slithered. My stomach pitched. I didn't reply. I didn't block. I didn't do any of the things Damien's Rule 2 demanded. I stared at the words until they blurred. "Lila?" Jules asked, reading my face like it was a page with more footnotes than body text. I swallowed. "He says he's going to swing by." Jules' eyes went narrow and sharp. "He'll swing by when I'm here, and I'll swing my shoe into his shin." My thumb hovered over the screen. My chest remembered water the way bodies remember gravity. I hated that my brain went floaty in the exact moment I needed it heavy. I took a breath and did the thing I'd promised to do. I forwarded the message to the number in my phone with no name, only a letter. It took 9 seconds. Wolf. Noted. Do not reply. Where are you now? Hartman. At the gallery. Shift till 7. Wolf. I'll be outside by 6:45. Leave by the back. Don't change your routine. Don't give him a pattern. I stared at the last line. It made me want to argue, because arguing would feel like control. Instead, I texted back a single letter. K. Did you just text a K? Jules asked, scandalized. Are we in 2003? It's efficient, I said, trying for a smile and managing an approximation. Also, he doesn't deserve full words. The minutes between 6:30 and 7 moved like honey in the fridge. I pretended to straighten prints that were already straight. I told Jules about the morning until she snorted coffee out her nose. I made a list in my head of groceries I needed from the co-op and added rosemary for no reason at all. then crossed it out with unnecessary force. At 6:44, my phone buzzed again. Wolf. I'm here. I peeked through the side window, not because I don't trust a man who can bend a boardroom by looking at it, but because I needed to attach the word here to a reality. His car idled in the no parking zone with the arrogance of someone who would simply buy the spot if challenged. He stood beside it, hands in pockets, posture loose but alert. My heart, stupidly, settled. At 6:51, the gallery door opened. Liam stepped in. White shirt, expensive, sleeves rolled to show tanned forearms, hair neat, smile contrite. His cologne arrived in a wave that made Jules take a small step back, like she'd been physically tapped. He glanced at her as though she were a chair, then fixed his attention on me, the way a moth fixes on a flame, and then wonders how it got burned. Lila, he said, doing the voice. I wanted to apologize. Again, face to face. We're closed, I said automatically, though the sign would disagree for 9 minutes. I won't take long. He held out something that tried to be flowers and ended up as a metaphor. Lilies too white, too sharp. I miss you. We were good together. You know we were. I made a mistake. A stupid, small mistake. Small? Jules said, because Jules doesn't come in small. He looked at her the way you look at a gnat you can't quite see. This is between me and Lila. Correction, she said sweetly. Everything in this room is between me and Lila until I decide it's not. He flicked his eyes around the space and calculated. He took a step closer to me. My knees didn't buckle. I counted that as progress. I'm not interested, Liam, I said, and marveled at how calm my voice sounded when my mouth felt like cotton. Please leave. Come on, he coaxed and leaned in, and the smell of him brought up a memory so fast and unwanted that I tasted it. Water, a flash, the iron tang of panic. You're not this cruel. I straightened. I said, leave. He smiled, small and dangerous. Or what? The back door clicked. Damien's presence didn't enter the room as much as reassign the room to itself. He didn't stride. He arrived. The air noticed. Liam registered him as a category first, man, then as a threat, man like this, and then as an obstacle, man who will not move. He scowled, tried to widen his shoulders, and discovered physics was not on his side. This is a private conversation, he said, attempting steel and getting tin. Then have it somewhere else, Damien said, even, the way you talk to a dog you don't want to spook. The lady asked you to leave? Liam laughed, and it sounded like someone scraping a fork across a plate. Who are you, her dad? My mouth opened, because the words in it were unwise, and then closed, because my body chose my life. Security has been called, Jules lied fluently. Police follow. You have 30 seconds to turn around and try again tomorrow with better choices. It could have gone one of two ways. Liam chose the petty one. He dropped the lilies on the floor, shook his head with a pity I didn't buy 5 months ago and will never buy, and walked backward toward the door, like he wanted to leave an image in the museum of his own drama. He hit the bell with his shoulder. It jingled like a laugh, and then he was gone. I exhaled a breath that had been filing for emancipation in my lungs. My hands shook. I hated that they shook. I bent, picked up the lilies, and tossed them in the trash, as if that could make the moment easier to throw away. You, I began, to Damien, to Jules, to the way the world sometimes aligns when you don't deserve it. Rule 4, Damien said quietly. Lecture later. Tears stung, hot and humiliating. Jules pressed a napkin into my hand with the brisk affection of someone who has seen me at my worst and remains committed to pretending that my worst is a form of art. I'm fine, I said, which was true the way it's true that rain isn't an ocean. Damien didn't contradict me, but his eyes did. He moved once through the room, checking doors with a glance, and then returned to the back. "I'll walk you to your car at 7, he said. "And tomorrow, we practice scenarios." "Scenarios?" I echoed. "Script beats panic," he said. "We'll write one." He left the back door open an inch like a promise. The hum of the gallery returned, low and ordinary. Jules sniffed the air and made a face at the lilies in the trash. "Hydrangeas are better," she said. "Blue ones." "From someone who knows where you live." I blew out a breath that wanted to be a laugh and failed. "You're a menace," she preened. "I'm your menace." At 7, we turned off the lights. Damien fell in step without making me feel escorted. Outside, Harborview's evening stretched honey pale and then darkened by degrees. He didn't talk. I didn't either. The script, apparently, would arrive tomorrow. At my car, he paused. "Text when you're home." "Rule 1, I said. "Rule 1, he agreed. "And Damien," I added, "because I'm me and I can't leave anything clean if I can complicate it." "Thanks." He nodded once, as if filing it. "You're welcome." I slid behind the wheel and sat with my hands on the steering for a full minute before turning the key. When I drove, I took the long way home, past the harbor where the water wore the sky like a borrowed dress, past Sugar and Slate with its dark window reflecting streetlights, past Noah's house and my house, and the rosemary on the step, which looked, ridiculously, stubbornly, alive. At home, I showered in water that was warm and harmless. I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling until the lines there began to look like maps. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. Wolf. "Home?" Hartman. "Home." 3 dots. Then, Wolf. "Sleep. Tomorrow 5:30. Scenarios. Harborview Park, by the big oak." I made a face at my ceiling for form's sake. Then I typed, "I hate running." Wolf. "We're not running. We're rehearsing. If you do it enough, your body will choose the line you wrote, not the panic it remembers." I stared at the sentence until the words settled into my chest like stones on a riverbed, reordering the current just enough to make a new sound. Hartman. "Fine, but I'm stopping for a caramel mocha after." Wolf. "I'll bring it. Large. Extra crunch." I blinked. Then I put my phone face down and let my mouth curve at the ceiling where no one could see. Outside, the harbor breathed like a living thing. Inside, my lungs copied it, awkward at first, then steadier. "Rain isn't an ocean," I reminded myself. "But sometimes the right person will stand with you at the edge and teach you which waves are the ones you can take." Chapter 4. Lila. 2 days. That was how long it took for the world to feel like it had tilted on its axis. Noah was gone, thousands of miles away in Guatemala, texting blurry photos of himself grinning in scrubs outside a clinic and assuring me that he was eating like a king. Translation: rice, beans, and more rice. His voice notes were full of noise, laughter, barking dogs, a rooster that crowed at completely inappropriate times. I missed him, even when he was annoying, which was most of the time. And Damien Wolf, because apparently the universe thought my life needed a plot twist, was now my neighbor. I'd watched his movers unload an entire personality's worth of sleek furniture and gadgets into the house next door. The sight of his Aston Martin parked in the driveway every day was surreal, like a magazine cover had migrated into my cul-de-sac. If Noah's house used to be warm chaos, piles of sneakers, travel souvenirs, half-read books, then Damien's version had become order and chill, like he'd exorcised all signs of life. I told myself I wasn't obsessing, that baking red velvet cookies had been a harmless act of goodwill, a peace offering, a neighborly gesture, totally normal. Except I hadn't expected him to let me inside, or to thank me, or to tell me he had hyperthymesia. Highly Superior Autobiographical Memory, HSAM. He remembered everything, every conversation, every detail, every emotion. My brother had known him for nearly a decade and never mentioned it, which meant Damien had chosen to keep it secret. And he'd told me. The thought rattled around in my brain long after I left his pristine living room. I couldn't shake the contrast. Me, who remembered nothing before the age of 9, standing across from a man cursed to remember everything, even what he might wish to forget. That night, I tossed and turned until dawn. When I did sleep, I dreamed of 2 reels playing side by side. His, unspooling with relentless precision, mine, with missing frames and jump cuts. The next morning, Jules barged into my kitchen, already talking. "Please explain why there's a potted rosemary bush on your porch." She set her laptop bag on the counter, plopped onto a stool, and pointed at me with a nail sharp enough to qualify as a weapon. "Did Damien give it to you? Is it his weird way of flirting? Because, babe, herbs are not foreplay." I groaned into my cereal bowl. "It's mosquito repellent." "That's what he said?" Jules snorted. "Of course he did. He probably has statistics about the bite radius per square meter." I stirred the soggy loops in my bowl. "He didn't give it to me. He just placed it by the steps, like a territorial cat." "Mm-hmm. And you just happened to go into his house yesterday with cookies?" My face heated. "It was a truce basket." "Red velvet, right? With cream cheese chips? Your signature?" Jules tapped her temple. "Don't try to outmaneuver me, Hartman." "I know you," I glared. "You're supposed to be my best friend, not my prosecutor." "Sweetie, I can multitask." She flipped her hair and leaned closer, voice dropping. "Was he hot?" I hated that my brain immediately offered me the memory on a silver platter. Damien in his work shirt and tie, sleeves rolled up, whiskey glass in hand, eyes dark when he said horror was his memory's constant companion. I stabbed my spoon into the bowl. "He's him." "That's a yes," Jules said smugly. "And you're in trouble." That evening, after closing up the gallery, I found myself walking slower on my street, reluctant to go home. Damien's blinds were open, and I caught a glimpse of him in the living room, sleeves pushed back, tie loosened, head bent over documents on a glass table. He looked like a still from a noir film, shadowed, sharp, self-contained. I lingered too long. His head lifted. Our eyes met across the distance between our houses. My face went hot. I scrambled up my porch steps, fumbling with my keys like I'd been caught doing something illicit. When I glanced back, his blinds were drawn. The following day, I worked a shift at the Mariner Gallery with Jules. Mid-afternoon, Liam walked in. I froze. He looked the same. Crisp polo, hair gelled, smile smooth, but his presence filled the room like smoke. Jules stiffened beside me, already angling herself between us. "I just wanted to talk," he said, holding out another bouquet, this time roses too red to be anything but cliché. "We were good together, Lila." Don't let one mistake ruin that I swallowed hard, my throat paper dry. "We're over, Liam." Please leave his eyes flicked, calculating. "Over doesn't mean gone." Before I could respond, the bell above the door chimed again. Damien entered, deliberate and unhurried. He didn't even look at Liam at first, just walked the perimeter, scanning the gallery the way he scanned boardrooms. But his presence filled the air differently than Liam's. Solid, grounded. "Problem?" Damien asked mildly, stopping beside me. Liam's face twisted. "Who the hell are you?" "The neighbor," Damien said, then softer to me. "Rule 2. My hand trembled as I forwarded Liam's text from the night before. "We should talk," to Damien's phone. His jaw tightened, the only tell. "Leave," he said to Liam, voice calm, almost gentle. "While you still have a choice in how this ends." Liam scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and stalked out, roses abandoned on the counter. I stood frozen. Damien's eyes met mine. "You did the right thing," he said. "You forwarded the message. That's the pattern now." No exceptions. The gallery was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Jules whistled low. "Well," she said, "that was hot." I groaned. That night, I dreamed again, this time of waves crashing over me, my lungs burning, panic clawing up my throat. When I woke, my sheets were damp with sweat. At 5:27 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Wolf. Park. Oak tree. 2 minutes." I almost ignored it, almost. But something propelled me out of bed, into sneakers, down the quiet streets of Harborview. He was there, waiting, as if he'd known I'd come. "Scenario training," he said simply. "If you don't write the script, panic will." I swallowed. "And if I fail?" "Then we try again." His eyes, in the gray light, looked less jade, more steel. "Until failing stops being an option." And for the first time in a long time, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone was teaching me how to stop drowning. Chapter 5. Damien. I drove my knuckles into the heavy bag and let the sound swallow me. Impact. Recoil breath. The ache that follows like a dog you didn't ask for and can't get rid of. The private room off the main mat smelled like it always does. Old rubber, cleaner that tries and fails to erase other men's evenings, a sour note of effort. Fluorescence hummed. The bag swung back at me with the personality of an irritant. I stepped into it, shoulder tight, hips aligned, and fed it another combination that would have broken a jaw if the jaw belonged to a man who'd chosen the wrong afternoon for arrogance. "Better," Ralph said, which in his language is the equivalent of a round of applause. He leaned one shoulder into the wall, stocky and carved, face set to skeptical so you had to earn your praise. I hit the bag until the metronome in my head slowed from thunder to something human. Krav Maga is a system designed by men who have seen what happens when chaos gets there first. You learn to cheat because there is no such thing as cheating if the other option is losing. You learn to end a fight with the first move if you can, and you learn to pull back right before you do serious damage, because most rooms in a city like this are not the kind where serious damage is worth the paperwork. Ralph tossed me a towel. "You looked like someone said the wrong thing in a nice suit." "Not far off," I said, dragging the towel over my face. Work had been a series of small fires disguised as memos. The kind of week where you watch men congratulate themselves for throwing money at a problem you solved before lunch. "We could do a few rounds," he offered, like a man offering absolution. "Shake it out." "Do it," I said. We moved to the center of the mat. The rest of the academy's floor thudded under beginner footwork. Missy had finally convinced him to test a community class. Good business, good cover. A room like this accepts all kinds of reasons for a man to show up. Ralph advanced. I blocked, countered. He grinned. Somewhere in the noise in my head, a thought raised its hand and asked to be counted. Beginner lessons. I stepped out of range and rolled my neck. Ralph blinked. "You flinched. Consider it strategy." I swiped sweat from my brow and sent a text with my free hand, fast enough that he didn't have time to chirp me for it. "Wolf. Self-defense class. Park your pride and show up. Tuesday, 7 p.m., KMA on U Street." I slid the phone away and we went back to work. He caught me in the ribs mid-combination. I absorbed it, filed the bruise for later, and tagged him on the shoulder with enough force to make him adjust his footing. We were not trying to kill each other. We were trying not to. We ended at 7 on the dot, because Ralph runs on the clock the way ships run on tide. He clapped my shoulder once, the way men do when they like you and aren't going to say it. "Good session," he said. "You might even beat me next year." I snorted. "You mean tomorrow?" He laughed, thunder in a room that doesn't hold it well. He left to wrangle beginners. I checked my phone. No reply. Lila replies to messages like they're part of her pulse. Not because I require it, because she is a person whose attention spills toward the people she has decided are hers. I waited a minute, gave her another chance to be who she usually is, and sent a second message. Nothing. I called. No answer. I breathed once, twice. The room contracted until it was not a room. For a second the smell changed, iron bright and antiseptic under it, and the heavy bag became a shape on a cream rug that will not come clean. My hand tightened around the phone. Focus. 16-year-old me lacing his first plastic guard on a forearm. A chalky mat that burned when you slid wrong. The fact that you can teach a body to respond differently than fear would like it to. I moved. I didn't change. Training clothes, damp shirt, bruised knuckles. I took the stairs 2 at a time, turned east on you, swallowed a snarl at a driver who forgot how lanes work, and let the city's lights strobe across my windshield, like a warning and a dare. "Pick up," I told the phone that wasn't ringing. "Pick up," I told the woman who had the inconvenient habit of making my chest feel like a house that remembers what warmth is after you've convinced it that winter is all there is. Her house was dark, except for the kitchen light. Jules opened the door at the second knock. Red hair in a ponytail that looked like a flame, and attitude like a weapon you can't outlaw. "Where is she?" I said, dispensing with anything that doesn't move a sentence toward the end of itself. She arched a brow. "Hello to you, too." "Jules." She leaned her shoulder against the jamb and gave me a look women give men when they have receipts. "Maybe she's busy." "With what?" Her mouth curved, mean and fond at once. "You know, life. Friends. Those things humans do. She's allowed to have those, despite your obsession with being the person every text routes through. You told me last week you were thrilled that someone else would answer at 3 a.m., so you could stop being the call center." "I said I was relieved," she corrected. "I didn't invite the panopticon. I do my research on anyone who could hurt her and everyone who might help. I know where Jules works, who mentors her, how hard it is to get into the law school she wants. I know because I make it my business to know the things that matter, and protecting a person starts with knowing where their walls are and who lives beyond them." "Address," I said. Her eyes cooled. "You're hot," she said, "but you're bossy." "Address," I repeated, and stepped past her into the entryway because men like me forget how to ask politely when we think time is working against us. She sighed. "You are a joy, Damien." "Less commentary," I said. "More directions." She grabbed her bag. "Fine. I'm coming with, to make sure you don't do anything that turns my summer internship into an anecdote about the time a very attractive man committed a crime of passion and my resume died." We drove without speaking. She reapplied her lipstick at a red light and said, like a man might toss a cigarette out a window, "She's with a friend." "Name?" "Eli, photography major, nice to dogs, last name." "God, you are insufferable," she said, and texted it to me anyway. We pulled up in front of a squat house on a street that forgot it was allowed to be pretty. Every 4th yard had a chair no one sat in. The porch light was out. I knocked once, and then again. A guy in glasses opened the door, startled. Skinny. Hands inked with prints of someone else's life. "Can I—" "Where is Lila?" I said. He blinked. Upstairs, but I moved past him before he could build a sentence. Jules made apologetic noises at his shoulder and tagged along because she knows me well enough now to know corralling happens better at the source than in the wake. We took the stairs 2 at a time. There are times in a man's life where his chest cracks open and something he doesn't have a name for squeezes out. Anger camouflages terror. Control dresses like calm. The door at the end of the hall was open an inch. I heard voices that didn't belong to fear. I stepped through. Not sex. Something worse. Lila stood in front of a bed that had been artfully wrecked. The lighting rig glowed like a third participant. She wore black lace cut in a geometry that made my brain reach for words and fail. Her hair fell in waves I hadn't earned the right to notice. She looked like a secret the world was not entitled to. A boy with bleached hair held a camera like a passport to the future. For a second, the room warped, and I saw not the lace, but the consequences. Not the camera, but the file paths it would take. Not the boy, but the men who can't be bothered to ask permission when an opportunity presents itself. What? I said, and the word carved itself into the air like a blade. Is this? She turned at the sound of my voice. Her chin came up. The heat in my chest dropped 10 degrees and hardened into something I could use. Photos, she said. Boudoir. For his portfolio. I volunteered. She held my gaze. I am an adult. Jules propped herself in the doorway like an audience. Glasses hovered behind her, attempt at courage with the shape of a swallow. Art, the boy said, nervous chuckle betraying him. No faces, if she doesn't want. Promise. The blanket sat on the bed like an option. I lifted it, draped it around her shoulders before I gave myself time to talk myself out of it. Get dressed. She let the blanket fall like an argument. No. I didn't raise my voice. I never do. You do not have to make the worst version of a decision to prove that it is yours. Her eyes flashed. You do not get to define worst for me. She slipped the strap back into place, deliberately slow, and I felt my control reach for the edges of itself. The boy shifted his weight. Sir, really, I took the camera. He reached out, reflex, not courage, and thought better of it when he saw my face. Damien, Lila said, voice glinting. Don't. I scrolled. Light, shadow. Lace turned to suggestion, turned to implication, turned to vulnerability dressed in gloss. I deleted. The boy made a sound that belongs to animals. Stop, she said, grabbing for the strap hanging from my wrist. Her hand brushed my forearm, and my body did what bodies do when warmth meets muscle, and history meets now. It noticed. I ignored. You are out of line. Maybe, I said. Maybe the line is moving because the wind is stronger than you are pretending it is. Do not talk to me like I am weather, she said, and stepped closer, the scent of her shampoo rising with the heat in the room. You don't get to be the man who tells storms where to go. Someone should, I said quietly, and hit delete again. She stared at me the way you stare at a man on the other side of a ravine. Then her mouth curved, not with humor. If you don't give that back, I will walk out onto the street in this. Don't, the boy croaked, to his credit, which arrives late and timid in boys like him. I leaned down, because threats should be delivered close enough to measure breath. If you go outside dressed like that, I don't destroy you. I destroy him. I make sure his portfolio never reaches an inbox that matters. I make sure the only headshots he takes are of bored interns who hate him. I will do it without breaking a sweat, and if I sweat, it will be because the room is warm. Jesus, Jules murmured, a little awed, a little appalled. She likes sharp things. She sometimes forgets why they're dangerous. Lila's jaw trembled. Ruin and fury and 100 other things I don't deserve to catalog. She stepped back. "You are the worst person I know," she said, and if the words had weight, I would have carried them home and set them on my mantelpiece to polish when I needed to remember who I am. "Get dressed," I said. She went into the bathroom and shut the door softly so no one could accuse her of slamming it. I handed the camera back to the boy. "If you ask her to do this again," I said, "you will regret discovering photography at all." He swallowed. "Okay, you're not wrong," Jules said as we walked back down the hall, voice pitched for me, not for Lila. "You're a bulldozer. It's handy when the alternative is a cliff." "I don't want her to need bulldozing," I said. "Then figure out how to teach her to drive the bulldozer," she said. We went to the car. She slid into the back. Lila took the passenger seat with the posture of a woman who will not give you the satisfaction of asking for heat when she is cold. No one spoke. I turned the radio on low because the inside of my head was loud enough. At the first red light, I risked it. "It wasn't about shame," I said. "It was about power. Who you gave it to. Who would keep it after you handed it over?" She watched the window. Her reflection looked like something trapped in a museum, beautiful and mislabeled. When we reached Harborview, Jules tossed a hand up in a lazy salute. "I'm going to go write an essay about how patriarchy is annoying and also sometimes useful," she said, and slipped out. I walked Lila to her door because I am a cliché with shoes on. She put the key in the lock and paused. "You don't trust me?" she said without turning. "I don't trust the world," I said, "and I am adjusting to the fact that you live in it." She laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. "You deleted my pictures." "You can take others," I said. "With a woman you pay and a contract that protects you?" "You think a woman would shoot me better than a man?" she said. "I think the person you pay should not be imagining your mouth while they adjust their ISO." She made a strangled noise that might have been embarrassment or might have been victory or both. "You are insufferable." "Accurate." I waited. I expected her to go in and leave me talking to the rosemary plant like a fool with a gardening problem. She looked up at me instead, and her expression did the thing that makes a man step back or step forward, depending on what he's built for. "I don't like being handled," she said. "I don't like being made small in the name of safety." I have already been small. I felt something in my chest try very hard to do a thing it hasn't done since it learned not to. "Then don't be. Learn how to be big and safe at once. And the pictures?" she asked. "You were magnificent," I said, because truth is a weapon too, and sometimes it heals when you use it with care. "That's why I deleted them." She blinked. Her mouth parted, then closed. "Leave," she said softly, and went inside. I stood on the porch for a full count of 10, and then left because men like me don't know what to do with softness when we've spent our lives learning to puncture. At home, I showered until the water ran indifferent down my back. I iced my ribs, then ignored the ice. I opened my laptop to the file system I don't talk about at board meetings. The man whose name I still don't say had moved a piece 2 squares in a direction he thought would escape attention. It didn't. I smiled, cold, clean, and put a counter in place that would look like coincidence if you tried squinting at it. My phone buzzed. "Hartman, if you ever touch my camera again, I will dye your rosemary pink." I let my mouth do the thing it rarely does in empty rooms. Wolf, "Rosemary doesn't take dye." Hartman, "I'll find a way." A beat. Then, Hartman, "Thanks for whatever that was." I stared at the thread, at the weight of a sentence that held both accusation and gratitude. Then, Wolf, you're welcome. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. The class, three dots, disappeared, came back. Hartman, I'll be there. But if anyone calls me ma'am, I'm walking out. Wolf, I can't control other people's mouths. Yet. Hartman. Figures. I slept like a man who expects to be woken by a sudden noise. Morning came anyway. I handled what needed handling before lunch. A call with my uncle that ended with him coughing and me pretending not to hear the part of me that cares. A board briefing where 3 men tried to sell me panic, and I sold them a plan. A quiet conversation with a contractor who used to forget to lock his van and no longer does. At 6, I drove to the academy early enough to stand in the doorway and watch the beginner class cycle through, accidentally hitting themselves in the face with focus mitts. Lila walked in at 6:59 in leggings and a t-shirt that made it harder than usual to remember my lines. She looked around with a bravery that you only recognize as rehearsed when you've done it yourself. Her chin tucked in just enough. Her ponytail high like a dare. Jules ghosted in beside her, waved at me with all 5 fingers and exactly 0 deference, and went to the benches. Ralph clapped once to get their attention. Welcome to a thing your body already knows and your brain hasn't named, he said. He's better at these speeches than he pretends to be. Tonight, we're going to make sure your feet do what your mouth threatens. I paired Lila with me because I am greedy and because letting someone else do it would have been an admission I'm not prepared to make. This isn't about strength, I said, holding up the pad. It's about angles, leverage, and deciding you want to keep being a person for one more day. She stared at my face instead of the pad. You're very intense. It's a symptom, I said. Hit. She did. Wrong part of her hand. I took her wrist, adjusted, and she hit again. Better. We worked through blocks until her shoulders loosened and the line of her back changed from careful to something that looked like belonging. When Ralph called for a break, she bent to tie her shoe and glanced up. You really think the rosemary will survive? It's a plant designed by a god who likes stubborn things, I said. She breathed out a laugh, surprised by it, and then wiped her forehead with the hem of her shirt, in a motion that sent my attention to places it was emphatically not invited to. I stared at the wall for a second and recited my schedule for the next day, until I could pretend to be a person again. We finished. She stood on the sideline and rolled her neck with satisfaction a cat would envy. Not bad, she said, for a spreadsheet that learned to punch. I tilted my head. You remembered. Unfortunately, she said too quickly and then flushed, because memory is a fraught thing between us. I know what you mean. I checked my watch because it's easier to look at time than at her. Tomorrow you text me when you get home. Rule 1 doesn't take weekends. She saluted in an exaggerated way that should have annoyed me and somehow didn't. Yes, Captain Control. On our way out, the boy with the glasses, Eli, stood on the sidewalk across the street, hands in pockets, chastened posture saying he had come to apologize and would run if chased. He looked at Lila, then at me, then at the ground. Sorry, he said, voice sincere and soft in a way I sometimes wish the world wouldn't punish. I should have had a better release. Better boundaries. Lila lifted her chin. We both should, she said. Do better. He nodded and left like he had learned that sometimes the right thing is not a speech, but a retreat. In the car, my phone buzzed. Unknown. We should talk. You can't run this forever. Not Liam. Not a boy. A man who thinks his shadow means the sun is his. I took a screenshot, tagged it for later, deleted the message, deleted the residue. The engine idled. Lila's voice came from the passenger seat. soft and almost playful and therefore dangerous. "Tell me something true," she said. "No," I said. "Truth is currency and weapon both. You don't spend it when you aren't sure of the exchange rate." She smiled sideways at me, wicked and tired. "Fine. I will." The rosemary looked lonely on my step, so I put a blue ribbon on it. "I noticed," I said. "It looked ridiculous." It looked happy. "So do ridiculous things," I said. We parked. I walked her to her door again because rituals matter. At the top step, she turned and looked up, eyes clear in the streetlight. "You deleted my pictures," she said once more, not a question this time. "Yes." "Good," she said, and let herself in. I stood there a minute longer than necessary, the evening settling around me like a coat you didn't think you owned. Then I went home to my cold apartment and my list of men who think tomorrow belongs to them. I added one more rule to the back of the index card in my pocket. She'll see it when she's ready. Maybe never. Rule 7. Protect without proof. Forgive without permission. It's a bad rule for a man like me. It's a worse rule to ignore. Chapter 6. Lila. The red digits on my clock flicked from 4:44 to 4:45 while the last of the lake slid off my skin. I kept my eyes open and counted the cracks in the ceiling. 4 long, 2 short, one that forked like a lightning bolt near the corner, where Jules insists a spider lives, even though we've never seen it. I breathed in for 4 beats, held for 7, out for 8, the way a therapist on campus taught me last winter after I'd shown up to the student health center, pretending I needed Advil, and accidentally cried into the receptionist's pen cup. The covers felt like a net. I kicked them off and immediately hated that I was cold. Jules cracked my door without knocking, because we don't knock at 4 a.m., and turned on the lamp like she was coaxing a plant toward the light. Time steeped in a mug. She'd read somewhere it helped, and now it helps because she believes it does. You can do worse than someone else's belief getting you through the night. "On a scale of 1 to screw this," she said softly. "Where are we?" "Somewhere between screw this and existential dread." I managed a half smile and took the mug. My hands betrayed me, chattering tea onto my Bugs Bunny t-shirt. "Sorry about the wake-up." She hooked an arm around my shoulders and squeezed. "I'm a saint. And I have a presentation later, which means I need to practice my villain voice anyway." "Consider this warm-up." She kissed the top of my head. "I'll be down the hall. Yell if ghosts, men, or patriarchy." "Patriarchy is a man and a ghost," I muttered. She clicked off the lamp, left the door cracked, and padded away. I tried to slide back under the covers and pretend that my ribs weren't a birdcage. Sleep laughed and walked into another room. By 6:15, the sky over Harborview was making up its mind about being blue. I gave up. I showered, dressed, braided my hair so it would cooperate with the day, and made toast I didn't want, because that's what functioning people do. They butter something and put one foot after the other. I checked my phone and stared at the last thread from last night. Wolf. "Tomorrow 7 p.m. The class." Hartman. "I'll be there, but if anyone calls me ma'am, I'm walking out." Wolf. "I can't control other people's mouths." Yet, I should have texted him about waking up like a beach. Salt, breath, the sound of water in places water isn't. But Rule 4 is lecture later, not 13-paragraph confessional at dawn, and I was not ready for whatever version of later that would be. Instead, I tapped out. Hartman. Awake. Not leaving the house yet. Not planning to make today interesting. The dots appeared and disappeared like they couldn't decide if I deserved a response. Wolf. Received. I rolled my eyes at the phone. Mr. Literal. I told the rosemary plant on the porch when I set the mug beside it. The rosemary plant wore a blue ribbon I'd tied on 2 days ago because it looked lonely. It looked judgmental anyway. Don't let him talk you into being a topiary, I whispered to it, and then shut the door. At 10, the morning roast was full of the usual characters. Booth reading the paper behind Bridget while not reading the paper at all. A toddler trying to convince her mother that muffins counted as fruit if they were blueberry, and Stella photographing latte art like it might cure disease. We wedged into our usual corner with our usual orders. Jules had already launched into the performance of last weekend, turning Damien's clipped sentences into opera, because she knows exaggeration is how you smuggle truth past people's defenses. By the time Bridget said, "All the fun stuff happens while I'm away," the part of my chest that lights up at my friends had pushed the nightmares back far enough for me to sip coffee without tasting the lake. I wanted to say no to any plan that included exploiting a man's emotions, even if that man fascinated and infuriated me in equal measure. I wanted a small day, a quiet one. Failing that, I wanted to be honest. Instead, 45 minutes later, I had caved to Operation Emotion and signed my name to a notepad that looked far too official for something invented over scones. Phase 1 would commence in 3 days, which Jules pronounced like a general sending a regiment to battle. Bridget clapped. Stella looked guilty while asking for details. I put my head on the table briefly and thought, I hate myself. Think of it as science, Jules said, patting my hair. He's the control. He's not the control. He's the variable that refuses to declare itself, I said, and then jumped because my phone lit up again. Liam. Coffee? 5 minutes? Outside the gallery? Please. I swiped the notification away so fast I nearly broke my wrist. Shame flooded my neck, hot and familiar. I didn't want to deal with him. I definitely didn't want to deal with him in front of the girls. Stella looked at me over her camera. You okay? Fine, I said much too quickly. Just a spam caller flirting with my data plan. We finished coffee. Bridget told a story about a duke whose French bulldog had gotten loose at the consulate and terrorized a diplomat. Jules called him Duke of Dog and almost got shushed by Booth. I laughed more than the story warranted because laughter sometimes lifts the roof and sometimes nails it on. Outside, the sky had settled on bright. We split at the corner, Bridget to class, Stella to a brand meeting, Jules to her internship, me to the gallery. I paused by the door with my key in my hand, then pulled my phone out and did the thing I promised I'd do. I forwarded Liam's message. It took 14 seconds, long enough for me to decide I was being dramatic and undramatic at once. Wolf. Do not reply. If he's outside, go in the front. Ask Bilal to walk you through the stockroom. Hartman. You know Bilal? Wolf. He sold me an Ansel Adams in 2019 for less than it was worth. I never forget a man who underestimates me. I snorted despite myself and pushed the door open. The bell chimed. The gallery's cool air wrapped itself around my wrists. Bilal looked up from the stack of frames he was rearranging and raised an eyebrow I'd privately named Judgment. Friend? He asked. Loosest definition of the word, I said. Can you escort me through the back? There's a small situation out front. Bilal doesn't ask questions when the answer would change nothing. He flicked his chin toward the corridor. Do you prefer to owe me coffee or a macaron? Macaron? I said. Lavender. We ghosted down the stockroom and out the alley into light that didn't feel like stage lighting. Liam texted twice more. My thumb hovered over block. I didn't. Instead, I tucked the worry into my back pocket with the receipt for the lavender macaron I'd pick up on my break. The day did what days do when you've started them at 4:44. They stacked moments like plates and dared me to carry them without dropping anything. I sold a print to a woman who kept saying, "My husband will hate this," which is why I love it. I convinced a donor that the next exhibition would be transformative, which felt like both a promise and a threat. I scheduled a Nanny and Me photo shoot for Saturday and set a reminder to bring stickers and a lens cloth I didn't mind sacrificing to tiny jam hands. At 6:30, I stood in front of the mirror in the academy locker room and tied my ponytail tight. My ribs still felt like a xylophone. I didn't want to hit anything. I also wanted to hit something very much. Damien was in the corner of the mat, sleeves shoved to his elbows, talking low to Ralph. When he saw me, his eyes ran a quick assessment. Hair, shoulders, hands. I bristled on instinct and then felt stupid because this is what he does. He inventories. He triages. That list in his head is partially how I am still unbothered by men like Liam. "Warm up," he said when I reached him, offering me pads like a peace treaty. "Hands up, chin down, punch through, not at look at you," I said. "Dropping poetry?" "Rhymes are a gateway drug." He held the focus mitts up. "Hit." I did. He adjusted my wrist with a touch that communicated exactly two things. You're safe, and you can do better. The third round loosened something in my chest that I had wanted and not wanted to dislodge all day. Between jab crosses, Operation Emotion popped into my head like a neon sign. Happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, jealousy. Jules had circled jealousy so hard the paper tore. I had argued no. Then I had helped pick out outfits. My moral compass is apparently a suggestion. I tried happiness first because it seemed kind. "Tell me a joke," I said between punches. "No," he said. "Okay, Groucho Marx," I said. "What does your face do when it experiences joy? Does it go to HR to file a complaint?" He stared at me for a beat too long, and then, traitorously, the corner of his mouth twitched. I pounced. "There." I saw it. Movement. "It was a muscle spasm," he said. "Uh-huh." "Again," he said, and I hit, and the electric fence around him hummed, and I kept my hands up anyway. Halfway through, a dad in cargo shorts wandered too close to the beginner group and knocked over a water bottle. The puddle spread toward the edge of the mat. A kid slipped and went down awkwardly. A chorus of "Oh no" rose and died. Damien was there in 2 strides, hauling the kid to his feet, gentle hard, assessing for damage. The kid's eyes were wet. "I'm fine," he lied. His voice did that wobble boys his age hate because it betrays them. "You will be," Damien said, too even to be called soothing. He crouched eye level with the kid. "Tell your brain your body is still in charge." The kid sniffed and nodded, choosing to believe a stranger because sometimes that's the easiest way to get to the next minute in one piece. Damien sent him back to Ralph and turned. His gaze brushed me. For a second, his face held something like alarm. It flickered away. "Fear," my brain whispered, and I hated that part of me cataloged it for Jules. I didn't want to turn him into a lab rat. I also wanted to know what was behind his cage. 2 women live in my head. They hate each other. I let them take turns. When class ended, sweat glued my shirt to my spine. Jules appeared from the bench where she'd been adding exhibit next to exhaustive cross in a legal pad. "Look at you," she said in sing-song, a menace in leggings. "Eat me," I said fondly and gulped water. She waggled her brows at Damien like flirting was an Olympic sport and she was trying out for the team. He ignored her, which only encouraged her later. "Tomorrow makes 3 days," she whispered as we walked out. "Phase 1. Phase 1 is no," I said. "Phase 1 is yes," she sang. "Phase 1 is maybe," I compromised unhappily. "If you get me fries." She gasped. "Manipulation! From you! I'm so proud!" She clutched her heart. "Of course, fries." With truffle oil. We're not monsters. Damien's car idled out front. He held my door like a valet trying not to look like one. When we slid into the night, I said, Can we not talk for a second? Yes, he said, which is one of the reasons I don't hate him. We drove in silence until Harbor View's streetlights turned the wet pavement into a string of coins. People moved through their lives unaware that a man and a woman in a black car were trying not to drown in their own heads. At my house, I reached for the door handle and paused. I slept at 4:44, I said to the window, then flushed, because that's not how you talk. I woke then. The nightmare, he didn't ask for details. Do you have a ritual after? Tea, breathing, avoiding existential conversations with houseplants. Add this, he said, cold water on the wrists. 30 seconds. Why? Your wrists are highways, he said. Blood. The nervous system will accept the rerouting if you give it a compelling reason. Fun fact, I said, even though it wasn't fun at all. In Mandarin, the word for 4 sounds like the word for death. I don't grant numbers that much power, he said. You don't have to, either. I wanted to say, you live like every small thing is an enemy until proven otherwise, but I didn't, because my throat had decided the car was not the place. Text when home, he added. Rule 1. I'm aware of the rules, I said. Make new ones if you want, he said, so quietly I almost missed it. Give me a copy when you do. I went inside. The rosemary looked smug with its blue ribbon. I texted. Hartman, home, cold water applied, hands offended. Wolf. Good. Sleep tomorrow if you can. Night market Friday. Don't go near the piers. I frowned. Hartman. How did you? Wolf. Jewels. Of course. The Harbor View night market tumbles through town twice a month in summer. Lights strung over food trucks, teenagers practicing freedom on corners, toddlers sticky with fruit they didn't eat. The piers give it a postcard backdrop and me a mild coronary. I don't set foot on those planks unless a client pays me an obscene amount or a life depends on it. Hartman. I'm not going near the water. Wolf. I know. I stared at the screen until the dots stopped laughing at me, then put the phone face down. Wednesday slid into Thursday like a bruise. In the morning, Stella sent a series of outfit options for Friday with a note. For totally random reasons not related to Operation Something. Bridget replied with 6 heart emojis and 1 knife. Jules added a gif of a robot catching fire. I sent a picture of my plain white sneakers and said, I am Switzerland. At lunch, Liam sent 3 texts I didn't answer. Bilal found me reorganizing the back room and said, Lavender macaron, and handed me a napkin. He is a man of his word. I am a woman trying to be. In the afternoon, Noah texted a photo of a kid asleep on a cot under a ceiling fan and wrote, He laughed at my Spanish and then taught me slang I shouldn't use. I sent back a heart and a picture of the rosemary with its ribbon. He sent 6 laughing emojis and the words, Tell Damien I will haunt him if he kills that plant. Thursday evening, I shot a series of headshots for a local nonprofit in front of a brick wall that had opinions. On the way back, I passed Sugar and Slate and watched the bakers frost a cake like it mattered. It does. Small things are how you practice the big things without ripping any muscles. When I got home, there was a small brown paper bag on my steps with Lila written on it in a hand I recognized from index cards. Inside, 2 rosemary sprigs wrapped in damp paper towel and a note. For the nightmares. Boil. Breathe. I lifted the sprigs to my nose. The scent ran up my spine and told my brain to shut up. I didn't text him then. I set a pot to simmer and watched steam clot the kitchen window. Friday arrived with a sky that couldn't be bothered to decide between honest blue and storm gray. I dressed in denim shorts and a loose white shirt, and then changed into a sundress, and then back into the shorts because legs are less anxious than necklines. Jules appeared in my doorway like a fairy godmother who shops at sample sale and thrust a pair of gold hoops into my hand. "You look edible," she declared. "Let's go mildly ruin a man?" "I hate that sentence," I said, but I put the hoops in anyway. We met Bridget and Stella by the park and joined the river of people flowing toward the market. Booth followed at a respectful distance that wasn't distance at all. String lights flickered on though the sun hadn't quit. Vendors shouted. A busker with a violin made a pop song sound like heartbreak. My ribs ached, but in a way, that meant alive. "Phase 1, Jules whispered, jabbing me. She tipped her chin at the edge of the crowd. Damien stood there like a man who had wandered onto a parade by accident and decided to stay just long enough to write a report. He wasn't difficult to spot. Tall, still, the kind of posture that makes people get out of your way without noticing they have. He wore a dark t-shirt and jeans that did not make me feel anything at all, and I am lying. He saw us. His gaze flicked from my face to the girls to the water and back to me. "Don't push," he said to me under the din. "If you get near the pier, I pick you up and carry you away, and then you have to explain to half of Harborview why you're being carried like a sack of flour." "Romantic," I deadpanned. "I'm full of surprises," he said. Jules stage whispered, "Test 1, happiness, like a nature show narrator." I elbowed her. "How does one make a spreadsheet happy?" Bridget mused. "Feed it," Stella said. "Data or dumplings." "Dumplings it is." I grabbed Damien's wrist, pulse, holy hell, and tugged him toward the truck line. "Come on, live dangerously, eat carbs in public." At the front, the woman in the truck squinted at Damien. "You're the Rosemary murderer," she said. He blinked. "I'm... what?" "Belen's cousin," she said, pointing a skewer at his chest. "You told him Rosemary doesn't take dye?" I choked. "Wait, Belen tried to dye his herb?" Damien's mouth twitched. "Twice in 1 week." I stand corrected. "It does take dye. It just looks ridiculous." "We like ridiculous," I said. 2 orders of pork dumplings, 1 of scallion pancakes, extra crispy. We ate sitting on the curb like teenagers with good posture. The grease bled through the paper plate in a way that means excellent. I watched his face when he took the first bite. He didn't smile. He did close his eyes for exactly half a second. I counted that as a point. "No forks?" he observed. "Use your hands." "They're attached." I licked a thumb. He looked away. We wandered. I cheated on Operation Emotion by enjoying myself. Stella bought us bracelets threaded with tiny blue glass beads. "For luck?" she said, fastening one around my wrist. "And for hitting things." Jules dragged us to a game booth where you could win a shark plush the size of regret if you knocked down 3 milk bottles. I paid the man $5 and failed miserably, laughing so hard the second throw died in my hand. Damien handed over another 5 and knocked all 3 bottles down on the first try, because of course he did. "Choose your prize," the booth guy said, bored. I pointed at the shark. "The obvious choice." Damien handed it to me without looking. "To commemorate your near drowning in dumpling grease." "You're hilarious," I said, but a kid tugged at my shorts then. Sticky little fingers, eyes solemn. "Shark?" he asked. I hesitated. "Give it," Damien said quietly. I handed the shark over. The kid beamed and ran, the plush bigger than his torso. His mother mouthed, "Thank you." My chest did that thing where it hurts in a nice way. I turned to Damien. "Point for you." "For what?" "Happiness," I said. "It snuck up on you." "Don't panic." "I never panic," he said, and then his eyes cut toward the pier, and I saw something ugly unfurl there. A balloon had come loose from a toddler's fist and sailed toward the water. The toddler decided to follow the balloon because toddlers are idiots. He toddled faster than his mother realized. He reached the edge of the pier, forgot about physics, and teetered. The sound I made was not a word. The sound his mother made was a word. His name stretched too thin to hold him. People turned. Time tripped. Damien moved. I didn't see his first step. I saw his hand close on the back of the kid's shirt and haul him back from impossible into ordinary. The mother sobbed. Damien crouched and checked for tears and found only snot. The kid reached for the balloon that was already a dot above the harbor. Damien pointed at the sky. "Let it go," he said. "Sometimes that's the only way to keep it." The mother said thank you 6 times like it would sew the moment shut. He nodded once and backed away. Hands loose, jaw tight, the muscle jumping there like it had a mind of its own. Fear, my treacherous brain whispered again. But what I saw was not fear. It was recognition wearing fear's clothes. I touched his elbow. He flinched minutely and then forced the receptors back online. "Fine," he said to no one. "Liar," I said softly, and he didn't argue. We moved away from the pier. Jules fell into step, high on the entire human experience. Test 2. Jealousy. She breathed, eyes alight. I wanted to smack her and also thank her for keeping the air from going stale. "Owen is here," she added, because the universe is cruel and/or a comedy writer. I followed her gaze. He stood near the churro stand, camera around his neck, hair less spiked than earlier in the week. When he saw me, he blushed, and then looked like he wished he hadn't blushed. Good boys should come with manuals. I lifted a hand. He lifted his. He looked at Damien. He looked back at me. "Go," Jules hissed. "Be charming." "I don't," I began, but Jules had already pushed me forward. "Hey," I said when I reached him, sharkless, hands awkward. "About the other day, I'm sorry. He was terrifying," Owen said with a nervous laugh. "Yeah, it's okay. He wasn't wrong." "That's not a sentence I like hearing," I admitted. "He texted me yesterday," Owen blurted, then flushed at his own confession. "He sent me releases to use, and a list of boudoir photographers who take interns. He said I could shadow any 2 and he'd pay the day rate." I blinked. Owen shrugged, shyly proud. "He also told me to never point my lens at a woman who didn't set the terms." He used more words. He scratched the back of his neck. "But he wasn't. He didn't. I think he thinks he's the bad guy." "He is," I said automatically, and then the sentence changed shape in my mouth. "He isn't." "He's inconvenient," Owen offered. I laughed. "Yes." He pointed at a string of pennants flapping between 2 booths. "You should let me photograph you sometime. In clothes? Preferably a sweater. On a bench. With witnesses." "I'll think about it," I said, and meant it. When I turned back, Damien stood with Bridget and Stella and Jules, listening to them the way men in powerful rooms pretend to listen before they steer. Only he was actually listening. I could tell by the position of his hands. He looked at me over Jules's shoulder. He didn't look jealous. He looked like a man who had placed me somewhere on his map and was marking the routes in and out with a pen no one else got to hold. The girls peeled off in a wave of perfume and laughter to circle the crafts. I drifted back to him. "He's not mad at you," I said. "Owen?" "I assumed," he said. "He'll be useful if he learns where the line is." "If." "He will." He glanced at the pier like it owed him money. "You have 30 minutes, then I take you home." "High-handed," I muttered. "Rule 5, he said mildly. I didn't remember writing that one down, but something in my bones did. We walked. He bought us oranges dusted in chili sugar and ate his neatly, while mine looked like a crime scene. He didn't mention it, which was either kindness or self-preservation. He let me stop for a ring at a booth where a woman hammered letters into silver and pretended not to watch his face when I slipped it on. When he looked at me again, Something in his gaze had eased around the edges. Not soft? Never soft, but less blade, more instrument. "Tell me about the lake," he said suddenly, so quietly the words ran under the market's noise. I stopped. The oranges in my stomach turned. "No?" He nodded, not surprised. "When you want." "Don't hold your breath," I said, and immediately wished I'd picked a different idiom. He didn't flinch. He never flinches at the wrong things. He drove me home just before 11. Lights low. Windows cracked to let in night air that smelled like fried dough and river. He didn't park in front of my house, because making the Rosemary jealous would be petty. He put the car in neutral and looked straight ahead. "Don't do the jealousy test," he said without preamble. My spine went rigid. "What?" He turned his head. "Jules is smarter than most people," he said. "But she is also reckless and bored." "Do not let her make you a project I'm not a project," I said, which is exactly what someone who is about to become a project says. "No," he said. "You are the thesis." "What does that even mean?" I demanded, too hot, too tired. "It means men like me need a thesis to keep from breaking things." He leaned back. "Also, you're obvious." "I am not obvious." "You are luminous," he said simply. "There is a difference. Don't make men prove they can see it." My mouth went dry. I wasn't." I stopped. Then, defiant. "And if I want to see if you have a heart?" He didn't look away. "You'll discover I have an excellent one. It's just behind reinforced glass." "That sounds lonely?" I said before I could stop myself. "It's useful," he said, and unlocked the doors. On my porch, I looked back at him. The light caught the cut of his jaw, the tired bracket of his mouth, the eyes that see too much and call it record-keeping. "Good night, Damien," I said. "Good night, Lila." Inside, I texted before he could. "Home. Rosemary alive. Hands washed." His reply came fast. "Wolf. Good. Sleep." I put the rosemary sprigs in a saucepan and breathed steam like a woman trying to rewire the part of her that thinks water is a verdict. In my room, I pulled the covers to my chin and told my ribs they were a house and not a cage. The rosemary ribbon on the porch moved very slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel, and I told myself that was enough proof the night was gentle. When I finally slept, I dreamed not of the lake, but of a shark plush under a small boy's arm and a man's hands pulling him back from the edge. In the morning, I woke at 6:02, which felt like mercy.